to the next section, which is about design and training and what is the product. And actually, VK's kind of pushed into what is the product. So I'm going to move back to Ning, and we'll go back to VK, and then we'll ask Charles if he will kind of summarize and bring any new comments, talking about what is the product when we talk about a case. And I know that we've talked about it prior. And can you do both a teaching and a theoretical focus or a research case at the same time? And what do you all see as the significant challenges in the design of case research? So Ning, could you address those questions?
Sure. So case study is both a process of inquiry about the case and the products of that inquiry. So that's a quote that I really like from Robert Stake's pioneering work on case study. So in terms of case research, I think the product focuses on the theoretical contribution. There are many forms. The contribution can be a set of themes, patterns, concepts, theoretical propositions, and or conceptual frameworks. And the process for creating the output, such as the research methods, the analytical techniques, the background literature, should also be part of the product. And sometimes a very important element of the product is also the story itself. Sometimes the empirical case in an academic paper itself can also be very interesting and informative. So that would be a critical part of the product as well. For teaching cases, the product includes the case itself, which is usually a story, a narrative. The teaching note, which is, we all know this, it's a reference document for all instructors. When I teach a case, either my own case or other scholars' case, I also create a customized teaching plan. And I believe a lot of my colleagues create these customized teaching plans as well. So the teaching plan basically includes what topics I want to cover in this session, what questions to ask, when and how to ask those questions, and what the key takeaways could be from the case discussion. So this customized or personal teaching plan is more specific to the instructor and to the course. And regarding the sort of the duality of teaching and research cases, I think sometimes the same project can include both types of cases. For example, an academic paper can also have an interesting empirical story and can even include some best practices for managers, practitioners. So those papers can be even directly assigned to students and can be used in classroom teaching. So in other projects, we can also use some theories from an academic study or paper, apply those theoretical findings in the same or different context and write a case. And number three, in some relatively rare examples, and I think Charles mentioned some excellent papers which were using teaching cases as a pilot. So in those cases, we can actually extract theoretical insights or get theoretical inspiration when we write a series of teaching cases. And if we manage to get more data and perform more rigorous analysis, we can actually develop those empirical insights into case-based research. And finally, in terms of challenges, just to echo some of the comments that we made before. So for the theoretical component, I think the challenges could include how to achieve rigor, relevance, and novelty. For the empirical component, how to find access to an interesting and important research site. And finally, how to find really unique and interesting theoretical findings or managerial practices from the case. I think those are really the key challenges facing scholars and professors today.
Thank you for your comments. It was very enlightening. BK, do you have anything that you would like to say about the product
Sure.
itself?
I will probably augment what Ning said in terms of the teaching the process for bringing out a case for bringing to the classroom. And I think I'll probably embellish in a couple of things, but I will add a couple of more things to that. In terms of the design, I guess the one question that comes to my mind always is, where does the idea originate? Right? So it could be that you are grappling with theory and you find that there is some unease in your mind about what the theory says, and then you may go look around for an organization where you can explore that. So that's the starting point. But then you have another alternative where you find an opportunity. The organization presents an opportunity, so you jump in and then you develop a program out of it. Right? So I have seen both of those happen. So let me give you a little bit about the opportunism and how that can build into a program. And Marilyn, I'm sorry if I'm taking words out of your mouth. If you look at what Marilyn did in terms of a divestment book, when we were in KU, it started as a case where Marilyn actually studied a divestment taking place in a firm in Kansas City. And we used to have people coming in, and from the company, Marion Labs, come in. Michael Herman used to come and talk about that in the classroom. But then she broadened it out into a whole series of divestment projects. And that's the way she took an opportunity, brought it into a program, and then brought it as a book into the market. So that's opportunity going into through a research program, getting into the market. If you look at what I did in NASA, it came as a grant opportunity. So I worked with my historian friend in KU, and I was interested in high tech. I was always in love with technology strategy, so got an opportunity to get in. We studied that, but one of the things that happened to me as a result of that is I understood the whole issue of project management as practiced in NASA. So that gave me then an opportunity to pursue that, and then I did that with the Fast Cycle project in, again, Merrill Dow by that time, the pharmaceutical industry, and now project management in international emerging economies. So a opportunity that turned into a program, and then you take it to, so you don't know where it is going to come from, all right, where the ideas will begin to come from. The challenges, which I think are probably the place where I want to go to, access. That is the critical challenge, right? So if there are some young people in the audience trying to get into case research, I would say the following three. I'm sure that all the people here can add more things to it than I can. Become friendly with your institutional officer, because he or she has access to a lot of people who are contributing money, and they are heads of institutions. Activate and use your networks, your alumni networks, they're very good, and your recruitment. Go to become friendly with your recruitment officer, right? These are places where you can build contacts and then work through to get access to the organization for case study. Access. That's probably one of the biggest challenges. A second challenge that I'm beginning to find now is skill set. And let me give you two kind of skills that are critical here. One is interviewing. And interviewing is no longer, is much less frequently taught in business schools, research methodology classes in the PhD curriculum, right? Whereas if you go to sociology, or I don't know about clinical psychology, you will find courses on interviewing. Just because you have a PhD doesn't mean that you are good at interviewing. Yeah, let's be very clear. Just because you have a PhD doesn't mean that you are a good interviewer. When I did the Fast Cycle work, I was leading a team of people. One of them was a chair professor in finance in KU. And he came to me and said, before we go do all this stuff, I want to know what interviewing is about. And George Pinchas, bless his heart, he told me something that I didn't know before. So we used to have lunch sessions with a gentleman by the name of Cal Downs, who is one of the founders of the Organizational Communication Division in Academy. And we used to have lunch sessions. He used to come and tell us what are the challenges of interviewing. I'm talking about a distinguished professor in finance who is internationally known, who has never done an interview before. Okay, so just because you have a PhD does not mean that you do good interviewing. So you need to spend some time understanding interview process. A second thing I would also say is working with organizations is important. As a case researcher, you are setting up a temporary system where you have the organization on the one hand, and both of you are part of that temporary system. So you got to have some sensitivity to the dynamics of the organization, the politics that are getting played, because either they can kill you or they can help you. And you should have some sensitivity to the dynamics of the organization, because at the end of the day, you're part of that temporary system where the organization is an important player. So those are two things that I would say. And finally, and this is important, when we do with Cognizant, I'm very, 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 very adamant about this, we have to be very careful about ethical issues. When we deal with human beings in organizations, when we are interviewing them, we have to keep their welfare in mind when we do any interviews. That is important not only for our project, but for the credibility and the viability of the community at large, because a bad apple can tarnish every one of us. So ethical issues in dealing with human beings and making sure that their careers are not destroyed is an important issue that we need to bring to bear. That's an important skill set, and that's an important part of the rigor, if you will. So that's where I'm going to leave it.
Marilyn, do you have some comments about the design and training of what is the product?
Traditionally, we think in terms of the written case, but in today's technology, it may take several forms, including a video, an audio, and dear only knows what we're going to have out in the future. Second, with regard to the challenges, I want to point out one thing. Certainly access is very important, but what I find too frequently is that, and this may be my fault, but the companies, the executive with whom I am primarily dealing, expects that this is going to be a PR job on behalf of their organization. And they're used to that because cases in the business community literature very frequently focuses on best practices. So you have to be very careful in terms of setting up the expectations. BK said it very well when he said, you know, we are really invading their space and we are translating them into the broader world, into our students' lives and their learning. And we have a tremendous responsibility to the individual as well as to our broader audience, which includes where we publish, but also and our students.